Hello! Today I wanted to take you along on the journey of creating a fairly large-sized abstract painting. I'm going to be reigniting an old canvas. It's got a finished piece on it, but it's one that I had made maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it's been sitting here for ages. And so I thought it would be fun to show you what it's like to completely paint over something else and create something fresh and new with me. Okay, so I'm just going to hold it for scale. In the context of me, I'm like 5'7", so that's how big the piece is. And yeah, let's get it unwrapped so you can see what it was. So this is the painting that I'm going to be painting over. One of the things I really struggled about this painting that doesn't sit right with me is this like dark purple here. This colour I find so hard to work with. I don't know, purple is such a hard colour for me. That's why I used it in this piece, because I wanted to try and figure it out, but I didn't figure it out. It doesn't like feel like me. What I do really like about it, I'll bring it up closer. What I really like about it is I love the texture in it. I love the water. I love the skies. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't feel like the place. It doesn't feel like how the place feels to be in. When I'm there, this is not the like emotion I get. When I look at this painting, I just feel stuck. And that is definitely not how this loch makes me feel. So we're gonna give it a new go, give it a new lease of life. Exciting, reincarnation or something like that. I just wanted to say how incredibly excited I am to be doing this. This week I had been logged to my computer. I had a painting launch which requires an awful lot of website updates, edits, technical blah 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 blah. And lots of newsletter, social media stuff and video making as well. So it's all been very tech-tied and I've not had as much chance as I need to get outside and get painting, which are the two things which keep me balanced as a person. So I'm so looking forward to getting stuck into this. I've also been meaning to paint over this painting for years. So I am looking forward to giving it a new lease of life. There's something quite cathartic about painting over an old piece because it gives you space to be who you are currently in your practice. And as you're painting over it, you kind of learn and see moments that you really enjoy. You can say thank you and take them forward into the new painting. And you can say no thank you to the things that didn't work and learn from them as you paint over it. So it's really nice. I never feel bothered about painting over old work. For me, it feels like really energizing. And it's always a really good learning curve too. So yeah, let's get stuck in. Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Orla and I'm a painter, illustrator and designer from Scotland, and I'm creating work which is exploring and responding to nature, landscape and the outdoors, and I often take my work outside on walking, camping or swimming trips. Painting can be a really solitary process, and a lot of the steps that go into a painting are hidden or they're very internal. And I thought it could be fun to use this video as a way to explore what goes on in my head, what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling as I'm creating a piece or working through. So this video isn't about showing you the most magnificent piece of finished artwork that I've ever made. It's about showing you an honest insight into what goes on in my mind as I'm working. And if you're a painter yourself, I'd love to hear what goes on in your head in the comments below. And if you are just somebody who's interested in landscape, or you're interested in maybe getting into art, or you just love viewing art and you're wondering what goes on, this is a little insight onto that, and it can maybe help you learn how to see landscape in a different way. Before we get stuck into sharing the process and what I'm thinking, I wanted to rewind for a moment to show you the beginning, how I have started this painting and what I'm thinking about and how I'm focusing my energy before I even touch the paint. So in my last video I made, It was all about how I can use one of my favourite tools to generate ideas and get experimenting again. And so I'm going to practice what I preach and use the document I made which supports that workshop. So I made this PDF and it's free to download over on my Patreon. It's accessible for everybody, you can just go and download it there. And yeah, watch that video if you're interested in getting some ideas going yourself for your own practice. But I'm going to use this document and we're going to use this as a springboard to reignite this painting that I'm going to work on. So that first prompt and that exercise is just thinking about quick self-reflection on what you're wanting to develop and work on. In the PDF, I focused it on specifically like processes. How do you want to develop the processes and the materials you're using? But for this video, I want to develop the feeling of the piece. So I'm going to focus and the experience of painting it. So I'm going to focus my exercise on that. So my self-reflection exercise, I've written down, I want to do something that's fully abstract. I want to work from memory and continue jumping from words as a source of guidance for this painting. I'm feeling I really need to release and just kind of let go and play. And so that's what I'm going to be doing in this video, is just kind of letting loose and seeing what emerges. And last time I have written down movement and, if it's going to focus, I've written down movement and embodiment, which are two really important elements to my practice as a painter. Yes, I won't talk about that right now because I'll ramble in 10 minutes just chatting around those two words. On page 3 of this document, I've made a little exercise which is about writing a list of dream experiments you'd like to try. And so I'll share with you what I've written down for this painting I'm going to approach. The first things I've put, again, aren't material exploration focused, they're more like what I want to do in this painting. So I've put focused on feelings of the painting, so we're going to focus on the emotions, and that's going to be really primarily what's driving the work. I want to explore drawing to sound, continue to do that, and select the colours from the sounds that I've heard. I want to work to the emotions of a place, and I want to focus it on a really recent experience I've had, which was on a snorkeling artist residency. And we had a lot of time swimming and snorkeling and exploring those underwater landscapes. And so I want to try and reference it back to that experience, what I learned, things that I felt when I was on the trip. As every painting that I do, I am going to not keep myself beholden to this list, because I think oftentimes you start down one path and then it leads you down a separate one that you didn't even know existed. And so we're going to stay open to that and just use these as a springboard for more things to happen whilst I'm actually painting. To get myself warmed up, I've decided to pull a wash over this old painting. It's giving me a chance to look at it closely whilst I'm doing this, so I'm kind of documenting in my head what I have worked on before whilst I pull this colour over. I really like pulling washes over paintings, underpainting if you like, because it's a really nice warm-up. You get to paint without actually having to think too much about what you're doing, and it eases you into the process of painting again. In the latest polls I did asking people what they'd like from this video, a lot of you have voted for learning more about the concept and the research behind my work, and so I'll talk through a little bit about that with you just now. As a person, I am happiest when I'm outside walking and camping and just being in nature. I quickly became really interested in how these places were making me feel. When I was at university, I was struggling with mental health, and I found that the outdoors here in Scotland quickly became my solution and my escape. And at a similar time, I discovered painting, and when I brought the two together, something really clicked for me, and that's how I started exploring landscape in my work. And it's been an addiction ever since, really, because it's melded my two loves together. So I'm really interested in how places make you feel and how they impact your mindset. And in turn, this has grown into an interest in how we impact the places that we visit as well. So in my work, I really like to explore the relationships between people and places. Oftentimes that brings in stories. Sometimes you learn about the folklore of a landscape when you're exploring it. Other times it's documenting a conversation you had in a place. But above all, it's always about the sensory reaction to a place. It's the way that being in a space or looking at something closely, studying nature in depth, how that gives you an appreciation for the world more, and how you can learn to see the beauty in almost anything when you look at it closely. So the work is all about the expression of a place, this phrase, a sense of place. It's much more about the internal landscape, if you like, the kind of emotional space that these places give you, and how I can visualise that. I'm really interested in this idea of internal versus external as a concept, and I think that's why I love exploring sound so much, because sound is not something visual, it's something which you hear and that affects how you feel and how you see the world and how you experience the world. And so I love to listen to the landscape when I'm out in it, taking field recordings of birds or water or grass, and thinking about the movement of that sound and how that could be represented as a mark or a gesture in the work as well. So sound always features in my paintings as a kind of layer, if you like. It might dictate how I make a mark or how a shape is formed. And yeah, that's a really nice way to explore abstraction, I think. This painting is a perfect example of how I work from memory, thinking about places that I've visited and experiences that I've been on, the sensory reactions to this, how it felt physically to be in a place, how that impacted my body, how that impacted my headspace, the emotions that it conjured up for me when I was there, and the kind of takeaway and reflection from these trips, and how that can be represented, how emotions can be represented through colours and movements whilst I'm painting. Here is a reveal of the painting after one studio session. I worked on it quite intensely for about, I think, 7 hours or something, just building up layers. It was really warm this day, so the paints dried very fast, so it would allow me to keep on working. In this painting, I'm using acrylics, oil pastels, charcoal, and water-based inks. A lot of the times when I'm developing out paintings, it's like going with my gut. So I really love the colour story here, but there's something about this block of yellow which isn't sitting quite right for me. But I'm loving this orange. It feels really good. And this neon pink is far too strong for the proportion, and I don't know, it's just not quite sitting right. It's a bit too synthetic. But I'm going to pull something else on top of it, maybe the burnt sienna, and see what happens. Bringing in this block, maybe give it more flow compositionally by building in other blocks around it or by covering over it, I'm not too sure. And I think I want to have more of a sense of divide of above and below in the painting, I think. This feeling of coming above the surface of the water and below the surface of the water, and maybe telling more of a story of what is below, because right now this looks like what you would see on the surface of the waves, and it would be nice to show some of the story of what is actually below the surface, that whole other planet, that whole other world. So yeah, let's see what happens. Improvisation is a really important part of my practice, and as you're probably hearing, a lot of it is doing something, reviewing it, responding and going, that doesn't quite feel right, or that looks like that. So the process is very reactionary, it's very iterative, and it's very intuitive. It's really drawing on my intuition to try and find a visual representation of my experiences and my memories and my emotions. I've recently found a word which summarises quite neatly what I've been interested in exploring, and that is the word of psychogeography, which simply means describing the effect of a geographical location on the emotions and behaviour of individuals. This might all be sounding quite serious and heavy, but there's an awful lot of play in my work, and I really am interested in how I can keep that kind of sense of lightness and inquisitiveness, if that's a word. I'm really interested in how being outside and walking and doing these outdoor activities, they give me that sense of play that I had when I was a child. You know, exploring somewhere new, it gives you that sense of curiosity and wonder at the world. and it ignites that sense of awe at just how beautiful something can be, something as simple as turning over a rock that you've noticed, or going beachcombing and finding an incredible shell and just wondering, how old is this thing? You know, looking at nature really up close, it makes you question things, and it makes you learn about yourself and where you come from and the environments that we get to inhabit. The subject of landscape is such a huge topic, and it's one that I think will keep on fueling my ideas forever. Sometimes I stray away from this idea of emotional responses to landscape. Sometimes when I'm needing something different myself, whatever's happening in my life, it can be quite emotionally taxing painting in this way, because you have to really tune into where you are, and it's not always sustainable to paint every day in this manner. So sometimes I choose lighter topics, and it's just about a visual response to something beautiful that I've seen, and it's as simple as capturing the beauty in a place. Other times I get really obsessed with flowers and I just want to capture their joy. Sometimes I get really interested in the history of places, and I want to learn more about who lived in these locations and how they lived, and the marks that they made and the art that they made. And sometimes these kind of ancient symbols sneak into my art practice. I think as a person, no matter what you're doing in life, outside of art too, it's important to never feel beholden to sticking to doing one thing because that's what people expect of you. I think it's really important to go with your curiosities and let yourself grow and develop with your interests. And within art, I think it's really important, if you're looking at it as a career especially, to make space for different kinds of art that feed where you are at in your life as well. Because making art is so intrinsically linked to living and your experience, and it needs to mirror what you need as a person as well. So this is where I've decided to leave the painting for now. I've realised that I need a step away from this one to be able to know if it's finished or not, and I might come back to it next week or next month, I'm not sure. But either way, I hope this process of watching and listening to me rambling on about my art practice has been somewhat helpful for you, giving you some insight into how it is and how it feels to make a painting, what goes into it, the thought behind it, and maybe it has given you some ideas for your own work if you are a painter yourself. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you outside.